For centuries, the lowly ice boat represented the pinnacle of man's endless efforts to go faster and faster. In 1907, when the auto was in its infancy and the airplane had scarcely been born, the ice boat Clairol on the Shrewsbury River set an astounding world speed record of 144 miles an hour. Today, its time of glory is past and forgotten, but in the hands of hundreds of young sportsmen, the ice boat skims on. Hang on tight, boys, while we change the season. When you go boating, there's no telling what will turn up. The sail provided man's first means of travel beyond that of his own muscles. And until Fulton's invention of the steamboat, all the Earth's shipping rode the wind. In the century and a half since, while sailboating has ceased to be a necessity, it has grown mightily as a sport. The age-old challenge of wave and gale is heated still by the yachting enthusiast. And in America alone, his craft number more than 500,000. The sailboat sportsman will tell you, until you've sailed faster and faster beneath billowing canvas across its gleaming water, you haven't known the sea. You are looking straight down the 165-foot mast of the sloop Rainbow, famed winner of the America's Cup. Skippered by her multimillionaire owner, Harold Vanderbilt, she was among the last participants in racing history's most expensive competition. For nearly 90 years, British sportsmen fought vainly to bring back from the U.S. a battered yachting trophy, with challengers and defenders spending some $75 million. Today, the race for the America's Cup belongs to the past, along with the proud way of life it represented and the age of sail itself. Here come the angry, chattering racing outboards, as different from the stately sailing vessels as a jive joint from a Victorian parlor. In this remarkable accident, the pilot is thrown clear and his boat runs wild, which is exactly the way it seemed to be running when it had a driver. Watch center screen for another crack-up spectacular. The outboard was invented near the century's turn, soon after the car. It has come far since then, but from these pictures, you'd never know it. For those who find this race too harrowing, we'll turn to another. Here on the broad reaches of a river is one which seems peaceful enough. Through the years, in the quest of speed, racing boats have grown ever lighter and more shallow, while the power of their motors has progressively increased. Some of them are about ready to fly, and later on we'll see one that actually does. Talk about that sinking feeling. This fellow tries to pull out of a turn that is carrying him smack into the pier. If spills like these don't thrill you enough, the boats will come right up on shore to get you. For over 50 years in careening, bouncing inboards, man has pushed higher, ever higher, the world's water speed record. In 1903, it was 20 miles an hour. By 1910, it had risen to 34. Our film history begins in April 1930 when Gar Wood at left in his Miss America advanced the mark to a blazing 92 miles an hour. Two months later, Major Seagrave, England's automobile speed champion, went after the water record. He topped 98 miles an hour, then, ironically, with his goal achieved, crashed and was killed. Death replaced these cheers of another day. Seagrave's boat, Miss England Second, recovered and rebuilt, was taken over by Britain's Kay Don, who drove it to still a new mark, 110 miles an hour. Kay Don came to America to race his rival Gar Wood for the Harmsworth Trophy. Don won the first heat easily. Then, starting the second heat, Wood's Miss America jumped the gun, and Don's Miss England followed her over the line. Unaware of their disqualification, both men roared on, when suddenly Don hit Wood's wake, swerved, and overturned. Next day, Miss England Second was raised from the Detroit River, while the imperturbable Kay Don took movies of the boat, which a few hours earlier had almost cost him his life. In February 1932, Gar Wood captured the record from Don by traveling 111 miles an hour at Miami Beach. In July, in his new Miss England Third, Kay Don grabbed the record back, burning up Scotland's Loch Lomond at 119 miles an hour. Once more, Gar Wood roared off to meet Kay Don in the Harmsworth race, and all the world watched. But again, the Water Speed King's much heralded duel fizzled out. Miss England spouted fire, then KO'd by a broken piston, almost foundered as she sagged to a stop, leaving as undisputed champion America's Gar Wood. Sir Malcolm Campbell, 5 years later, supervised the designing of a radically different streamlined hydroplane. On August 20th, 1939, on Lake Coniston, England, he pushed his Bluebird to 141 miles an hour. Experts predicted no boat would ever go faster. The pressure of water on hull was just too great. For 11 years, Campbell's record stood, while a whole new breed of racing boats came into being. Now at America's famed Gold Cup races, spectators caught fleeting glimpses of flying hulls, followed by long streamers of spray. Stan Sayers, on July 7, 1952, guided his slow-motion Fourth onto Seattle's Lake Washington. Built with aerodynamic curves, slow-motion Fourth all but flew as she set a new mark of 178 miles an hour. Her sister ship, slow-motion Fifth, wasn't so fortunate. Hitting a gust of wind, she actually became airborne, doing a complete loop-the-loop and tossing out her driver before landing head up to keep right on going. 2 months later, John Cobb boarded his boat as his wife at left looked on. Jet-propelled, Cobb's Crusader skimmed over Loch Ness. Though Cobb didn't know it, his craft was nearing the water barrier, the point at which the terrible impact of water upon hull sets up violent, shattering high-frequency vibrations. The barrier was reached, and Cobb's boat disintegrated as if torn to bits by an explosion. John Cobb had died violently, but not in vain. When Donald Campbell, son of Malcolm Campbell, set out on Lake Ullswater, England, his Bluebird had a stress factor twice that of a supersonic jet fighter. Averaging 202 miles an hour, Campbell broke through the water barrier and lived. Next, the Briton brought his $75,000 turbojet hydroplane to Lake Mead in Nevada. Skimming over water that at this pace is almost as hard as sheet steel, he chalked up a water record of 216 miles an hour. And so a new name joins those of the speed immortals, Donald Campbell. Look out! Here comes that boat again.